Welcome to the Cook's Domain. Today I'm going to show you how to make the Indian base gravy stock sauce thing. Doesn't really have a name, I guess, but I know the Indian restaurants do call it base gravy, but it's not a gravy. It's not a sauce, because I know some people think that all I'm doing is making the curry sauce from beforehand, and then all you need to do to make a curry is just fry up some meat or whatever and just throw this in and bang, you've got a curry. And it isn't that either. My best way to describe this is it's like an Indian flavored vegetable stock. But that doesn't mean you could replace an ordinary vegetable stock with it, because this does a couple of things ordinary stocks or bouillon cubes or whatever just doesn't do. So you do need to do this for the curries that we're going to be making. Now, if you remember correctly, or if you've seen the video, I made a chicken tikka masala video for you guys, but in that one I made a small quantity of what this is, so that I can show you how to make a curry in one day if you wanted to do that. So you would have to make a small quantity of this, enough for that particular curry or that chicken tikka masala on that particular day, and how to make that before you then make the chicken tikka masala. And it takes about 5 hours to make a curry that way. And that's not actually how I make my curries. What I do is I make a large quantity of this beforehand and separate it into pots, put it in the freezer, and that way it's always ready to go when I want to make a curry. That way I can make a curry quite quickly in comparison to doing all of this every single time I make a curry. On the board here you can see the ingredients that we're going to need to make this, and this should be enough to make about 10 curries. The recipe itself isn't that strict. As long as you follow it roughly, you're fine. If you wanted to make a half an amount of this, and it would calculate to say 1.5 of a pepper or something silly like that, you don't need to do that. You know, just put whole peppers in or whatever, it's going to be perfectly fine. So it's not that rigid a recipe. But today, here's what I'll be using. I have here 5 medium onions that I've just cut up into sections, really. It doesn't have to be very finely cut at all. I have a stalk of celery that I've just chopped up. I have about 15 grams of fresh ginger just chopped up. 15 grams of fresh garlic just chopped up. This is 2 large carrots diced here, but you can add a little more, a little less, it makes no difference. I have 1 green chili, 1 red chili just chopped up. A whole green pepper. 1 tomato that's been quartered, 2 tablespoons of tomato puree that I then topped up with water just to make it pourable into the pan. I have a fresh batch of my mix powder, if you check out my video of how to make your own mix powder, and we're going to need about 12 tablespoons. As well as that, we're also going to need the following spices. I've got 1 Star Anise, 1 Black Cardamom, a piece of Cassia bark or cinnamon, 4 regular cardamoms or green cardamoms, 2 bay leaves, and I'm also going to add about 10 whole peppercorns. Now before we get started, the only thing I will definitely tell you is the black cardamom has a tendency to swell and can go pop. So what I do, I put it down on the board, get a sharp knife and carefully pierce it straight through, and that way it has a gap for gases that build up in this to escape. The only other thing I will also say is your green cardamoms, just with the back of a knife, just press down on them just to crack these open so that the liquids and the juices will go in and around them to get their flavors out. So the first thing we want to do is get quite a large pot onto your stove and turn the heat up, and we don't want a very hot heat, so just put it on medium. And we want to get enough oil into this just to cover the base. Now I know that seems like it's a lot of oil, but we're going to get so many curries out of this, so if you consider it that way, it's not actually a lot of oil per portion. And while that's coming up to heat, we can throw in our spices. Now we're doing this on a relatively low heat for a couple of reasons. We're not trying to cook the bay leaf and the cinnamon here, and we don't want it to burn either. The purpose behind this step is to season the oil, and that's about extracting maximum amount of flavor from these things. So it's going to take a little while. You might be doing this for between 5 and 10 minutes. And what you want is 10 minutes, but it all depends on the color of your bay leaf. If that starts getting too brown and almost getting black, it's going to make this oil taste really badly, really bitter. So if you see that it is slightly changing color, a little too early, just turn the heat down. The whole point is to extract the flavors from the cinnamon, from the bay leaf, from the star anise and the peppers, and just stir them around, just let them bubble away like they are around them, and just get all those flavors into this oil. And remember to agitate it as it's doing this over the 10 minutes. You know, we want to get flavor out, and agitation really helps get flavor out of these bits and pieces in here. Okay, so once we're done with this and we're ready to move on, all we've got to do is fish all this stuff out, because we don't want it to be in here. The peppers you can leave if you want, because over the course of this cooking they will become very, very soft, and when we blitz this, they'll just blitz straight into our sauce. But everything else we do not want in here, so let's get it all out now. Okay, once we've removed everything and we're ready to move on to the next stage, and that's to put in our spices. Now what I do is I don't want to be adding 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons of, you know, in that slow order, because whatever goes in first has got a likelihood of burning. So I'm going to get all my spices into a bowl, and I'm just going to tip the whole bowl straight into the oil and start mixing. So there we have our measured amount of mixed powder, and just straight into the oil and start to mix that around. We only want it in here on its own just for a few seconds, just for this to blush, and we don't want it to burn. Okay, well now we can immediately go in with our vegetables. So we can add our onion, and our garlic and our ginger, our carrots, our celery, our red and green pepper, chili and 1 red pepper. The only thing that doesn't go in is the tomatoes. Give this all a mix now. Just keep mixing it just until you can break up a lot of those onions. So for this amount we're going to need 2 whole tablespoons of salt. Again, I know that sounds like a lot, but this is going to make a lot of curries. When you consider it that way, that's not a lot of salt. And the salt now is going to help draw out moisture from these vegetables. Well, it's probably brought down the heat, so don't forget to turn your heat up. I'm going to take it up to like a medium high. Keep stirring it so nothing gets stuck at the bottom. Now obviously the vegetables are releasing a lot of liquid. We want to cook it down and soften till we get to that point where a lot of that liquid is evaporated and all we have left is the oil. But cook it gently. So I'm just a little over medium here, and if anything I'm going to turn this down to medium now, because we don't want anything to burn. Okay, and as we stir we can see that it's starting to get really dry, which means a lot of the water has evaporated out. But you don't need to risk it to get every ounce of water out, because we're just going to be adding water back in really. But this is important for the purpose of sweating these vegetables down and helping them soften. And I think that's pretty good where we are right now. So at this point we can now pour in our tomato puree. Mix that in, and we're just going to saute that puree just for a couple of minutes. So you should have some boiling water somewhere. Now if you have a kettle, boil up a kettle full. You might need to boil up a couple, but we're talking about 2 liters of water, boiling water, to pour into this in a minute. I mean, it already looks like the basis of a fantastic vegetable curry, but with the amount of spice and salt in here, this would be way too powerful to use this as a vegetable curry. But if you wanted to make a vegetable curry, it's very similar to this. You would use about the same amount of vegetables, but a lot less spice and a lot less salt. And then you would thicken this right down to the point where it would be, you know, usable as a sauce in its own right, which is not what this is going to be. Okay, so before anything starts to burn, let's start getting our hot water in. So I said about 2 litres, but to be fair, it's probably closer to 4 litres. Plenty and plenty of hot water. There we go. Give it a little mix just to get it going. And leave it on a medium heat. And all I'm going to do is put the lid on, but just with a bit of a crack. So I'm not closing it all the way. And now we just leave it alone. Just give it a stir every now and again, but just leave it alone now for at least 2 hours. Just keep checking it for the purposes, you know, that the water hasn't completely evaporated and we're burning everything. And top it up with a bit of water if you think it needs it, but hopefully it shouldn't. So yeah, we'll just check on it again in 2 hours. Okay, so as we can see, it's reduced quite a bit. Still got about half an hour to go. So with the last half an hour, I just put in the one tomato. And we'll just give that a half hour before we blitz. Okay, so when the half hour is up, and everything in here should be pretty much dissolving now, we'll want to hand blitz it to a smooth paste. There we have it, smooth paste. Now let's look at the consistency. See, now that's way too thick. That's not what we need. It's simple. We're just going to have to add hot water now until we get this to the consistency that we want, which is a little bit watery. So let's do that now. And there we have it. Our base stock gravy is done. All we have to do now is taste test. And you're looking for something that's going to be slightly salty, but only slightly salty, not overly salty, and quite mild in flavour. It should have a curry kind of background note, but really it should just be the flavour of pureed vegetables with a mild, very mild curry flavour, no, extremely mild, and just slightly salty. Perfect, that's exactly where we want it. Okay, all we need to do is get this into our plastic tubs, let it cool down, and put it in the freezer. Okay, so once our sauce, our stock has cooled some, we can now start to ladle it into our pots. And there we have it, 6 portions for us to freeze, and each tub is enough to make 2 portions of curry. So if you're cooking for you and a partner, one pot will do 2 portions of curry. So yeah, this is the foundation for any curry that you can make, from a korma, which is mild, all the way up to a phal or a vindaloo, which are the spiciest, and every other curry in between. And I'll show you the recipes. I'll do videos for the different types: jalfrezi, korma, vindaloo, etc. But this is like the stock of making a curry that I use, and I don't have to waste the hours to make this when I want to make a curry. I'll just take one of these out of the freezer, pop it into a saucepan, a little bit of water, literally like a 50 mils of water, not a lot, and just on a low setting on the hob, I'll just let it defrost and heat up. And then when I start cooking my curry, I'll ladle some of the stock in. So all I'm going to do now is put a lid on all of these, and I will label it so I know what it is. So curry base, and now we're in April 21. So I'll just label them all, and put it in the freezer. Anyway, thank you for watching.